Welcome to NovoEDTalks, where we reveal real-world strategies and expert insights from learning and development professionals. In every episode, we chat with practitioners, course designers, learning strategists, and business leads. We hear about their experiences in the learning industry and predictions for the profession and the trends that they're seeing. But before we get started, a little bit about NovoEd. Founded at Stanford's Social Algorithms Lab in 2012, NovoEd is a people-centric, capability-building platform that combines social and collaborative learning to drive performance readiness at scale. Through cohort-based experiences centered around human interaction, NovoEd taps into collective wisdom, placing each learner at the center of perspective, application, and expertise. Large enterprises such as 3M, GE, Marriott International, and Nestle partner with NovoEd to accelerate their critical initiatives, reconnect teams, and achieve rapid alignment through learning that is felt, experienced, and swiftly transformed into impact. Now, let's meet our guest for today's episode. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the NovoEDTalks podcast, a place for talent development trailblazers to get real. I'm Lynn Christensen-Esker of NovoEd, and today I'm joined by Michael Martin, Senior Director of Sales Enablement at Calix, a US-based technology company that provides cloud and software platforms, systems, and services to support broadband service providers. Michael is also an AI leader and an expert in talent development, leadership development, and coaching and mentorship. Michael, welcome to NovoEDTalks.
Thanks for having me.
I'm glad to have you here. Let's start off with a little bit about your background and sort of your specialty in talent development.
Yeah, so I started out actually in sales a number of years ago, and quite honestly, I tell people that I got into training and enablement basically because I felt a lot of the training programs, that were rolled out, oftentimes aren't, really methodically created. They're not, they don't have a reinforcement mechanism built in or metrics to track it, and so I kind of look at it. I kind of come in as like looking at it from the prism of from a sales team member because we know sales team members are just so busy. They're a different type of learner because they have a lot going on, and so I try to really make sure that we distill it down and give them really great training in the most concise way as possible because again their attention spans are short, and that's not a kind of a I'm not trying to basically say they have short attention spans. I'm just saying they're project managing so many opportunities and so many deals. It's just we have to understand that as we come to the table with their training.
So how do you keep how does training stick for them, for you? How do you do that?
Well, again, a lot of it comes from creating the training, making sure that first of all that we work with the leadership team and align with what they're trying, what their gaps and their challenges are, because that's really the goal is to make sure that it's beneficial. Because if you've ever taken training that wasn't relevant to you or you didn't feel like it was really helping, then it just becomes a burden and something you check a box to get done. And so we really try to take more time to make sure that the training is certainly valuable and increase that pull mentality because if they take training that really helps them and helps them kind of achieve their goals and maximize their impact, then they're really more likely to want to take it. The managers, obviously, if they're involved, they support it and they're able to reinforce it. So again, it has to be something that we continually reinforce because again, changing behavior is really what sales enablement is about. And it's really no one likes change, obviously. So it takes that kind of that methodical approach to make sure that everybody knows what we're doing, why we're doing it, it's well received and it's well crafted.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. You want to make sure that your workforce remains adaptable and prepared. So, as these skill sets shift, what strategies do you use to ensure that they're prepared?
Well, what we try to do is obviously we've kind of embedded in adaptability into our approach if we can. And certainly learning paths are, we consistently update those. Obviously, we're a technology company, things change at an exponential rate here. So we have to make sure that we're consistently updating our courses, making sure that it's not stale or inaccurate information. We've also integrated a lot of tools, AI tools, for instance, like Second Nature. We're a big user of that, which basically gives those team members the ability to really practice and get that feedback in real time. We know managers, obviously, we want them to be involved in coaching, but they can't be there at every juncture to give feedback. So the Second Nature tool just allows the team to get that feedback in a just-in-time format, allows them to practice without practicing in front of the customers. And again, as I said earlier, just making sure that we stay aligned with the teams and their leaders. I like to say that sales enablement, and I use this analogy like the white blood cells of the body. We should be aligned with our leaders so closely that when something happens, we're already kind of aware of it. In other words, instead of waiting for them to come to us with a problem, we are already kind of aware of the problem. We're basically making recommendations saying we're starting to see this or we have a fix for it versus waiting for something to become systemic. And now we're kind of just reactionary.
How do you measure the effectiveness of that? Do you have KPIs, anything like that?
Yeah, so we look at a lot of things. Obviously, it depends on the program because obviously a lot of initiatives are different. But certainly, especially with as it pertains to new hires, time to first sale, first deal size, things like that, deal velocity and linearity are certainly things we look at. Stage conversion rates at each of the stages, and we use that to kind of target what type of training we might need if we see a gap in certain areas as well. And we really are big analytics users as far as looking at tools, uh, the effectiveness of the tools and the teams using them. Because again, there are a lot of tools out there. Probably teams have tool fatigue because there's so many things, and no matter how great they are, we have to make sure that they're proficient in those tools. But we also want to take a realistic look to see, are these things really, giving us the ROI that we want? Some of the other things, obviously, completion rates. Manager engagement with some of the tools, and we try to give them dashboards to make sure that everybody has a really good holistic look of where teams are doing well and when they're not.
So you mentioned tools, and I think earlier you mentioned one of the tools that you use. How else do you use tools to enhance your learning and mentoring?
Yeah, so and again, coming as I call myself a recovering sales professional, I know that again, for instance, if we could give someone a course on Salesforce, for instance, and teach them how to do create an opportunity and go all the way through all the processes. But when they get ready to do that, they're probably not going to remember it. So what we try to do is really focus on micro learning, focus on just in time training. So using tools like Speckit, which basically will pop up in the moment and give them that that boost or that data that they need when they need it. Obviously, all the tools now have AI. So, for instance, with Speckit, we can load all of our data in. Now they can just ask a question and it gets them the answer versus having to memorize every process and everything about our solutions and tools. Certainly, we want them to memorize and remember certain things, but we try to make it to where they don't have to memorize every little process and every lever they have to pull because again, there's just so many with the number of tools and the number of cycles and the number of opportunities. So that just-in-time training is really our core tenet that we try to adhere to.
How does that work? Is that like in real time as they're talking to someone, or is that sort of like part of the prep of making a sales call? Like that's just fascinating to me.
Yeah, so I know there are tools, I think like Balto and some of the others that actually give you feedback as you're having customer conversations and recommending things to say. We haven't used that. I've played around with it a bit, but we haven't really used that as well. We really try to use the AI simulations to give them the ammunition to be able to speak to that. As I think Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan till you get punched in the face. And so what we try to do is put them in the simulations, and we're actually working on having them kind of be able to do their own journey. So, for instance, if they get ready for a call, they know they're having a meeting with a certain group or a company with a certain group of personas. We can create, or they can go in and create that simulation on their own and basically practice that session before they even go to the meeting. That way, we can load in some of the objections they might have, some of the concerns, and then they can kind of do that dry run. And it really does help because, again, I always say you can take tests and you can write things down, but when you open your mouth to speak, sometimes it doesn't come out in the way you want it. And so that's why the AI simulations are extremely important. And the Speckit is really more about if I need to, kind of brush up on something. And obviously, we link the simulations in the Speckit. So, for instance, if you search for a competitor, you can see that basically it gives you the option: do you want to practice your conversations when this competitor is in your opportunity? And so they can go in and really kind of up their game. And again, it's one of those things where I can give you a course on one of our competitors. That's great. But a month from now, when you go into a meeting and they're talking about the competitor, it's going to be hard to remember all that. So again, we want to make sure that they can go in and take that simulation right before the meeting, brush up, kind of really refresh their brains, if you will, on that information.
Yeah, practice is something that comes up a lot, I think. How important that is for retention and, making sure that it's sort of hardwired into your brain. I mean, how did you come to this point? I mean, you've been in sales for a while now, and these kinds of tools weren't necessarily here. Um, is this better than sort of like that old traditional model of being in a sales training and role playing? Is this, how did it get to this, and what do you think of that evolution?
Yeah, I've been using this tool Second Nature for, I don't know, probably the last couple of companies I was with, we were kind of using. So it started out a little bit on the bleeding edge. Obviously, it was kind of a new thing before AI was even cool. Obviously, it's advanced a lot since then. But yeah, traditionally, and I know when I was in sales, when you tell me we're going to role play, no one gets excited about a role play, and for a lot of reasons. For one is they don't do it very often, so when they do it, it's not something they're used to. The other thing is when you're role playing, typically with a live person, then it can kind of be all over the board because you're really just playing make believe. Whereas the simulations, we can actually build a bona fide simulation that's really concrete, and it has exact data in it. So you're not going to get variable answers as you go through it, and so it's just much more impactful. And again, as I say, typically our simulations, a lot of the teams, I would say not, maybe not most, but they fail it on the first time through, which is great, but probably not great, but definitely we can see that within a couple of times of going through it, they can get to the passing score, which again just shows that because they're giving them that real time feedback, what they missed, what they did well, as well as even some of the ums and ahs, and giving them feedback on their overall presentation. So very versatile tool, and we're just coming up with more and more use cases for it. But again, the days of the old training are kind of gone. AI simulations and microlearning are there. Now, I will say there still are some cases for some of the larger training courses. Obviously, you wouldn't want to go into a surgeon who basically learned how to do surgery on microlearning 5-minute courses. You'd want to make sure they went through a full program. So in some cases for technical training, we do have those larger courses, but we try to always look at it from the prism of how can we make this shorter, more concise, or AI simulations and work those in.
Where do you think all of this is going technically and with sales training? Like, where are we going to be 3 years from now, in terms of technology and how we, do simulations and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because again, if you look at the landscape of AI as it pertains to really anything, but especially training, it's kind of like a hockey stick. For years we've been seeing kind of just a gradual increase in AI, and now we're kind of basically it's just shooting straight up because every tool that we have has some sort of AI in it. Again, it's the new word everyone wants to say over and over and over. I think, and at least in my estimation, it's going to be more personalized. So I can see a future where basically you could go into a tool and just say, I'm a new hire here, and it will just start basically asking you, assessing you, making recommendations for courses, things like that. So it'll be more of a prescriptive approach for each person, without because right now, and often in some cases, we do have to put everybody through a lot of training because this is kind of the prescriptive list of training that we expect everybody to do. But AI is going to be able to make that more prescriptive to say, okay, this person, answered these few questions. Perhaps they don't need this course, and just really make sure that it kind of pulls them. And certainly, you could do that a lot of ways already today. You can go to ChatGPT or Copilot and say, test me on my knowledge of this company. So some of those things are already here. They're just kind of not built in a mechanism where we can assign it to new hires and track and see. It's more kind of you choose your own journey, if you will.
That makes sense. So, we've talked a little bit about the challenges that your learners face. What are some of your biggest workforce development challenges, and how are you approaching them? Okay.
So again, I think one of the things is basically scaling that enablement. We have a lot of teams across the globe. They all have different needs. We have a lot of various roles, and each role requires kind of a unique curricula. So obviously making sure that we're constantly looking at those to try to make sure that we have the right things in. We do a lot of feedback surveys and things like that at 7 days, 30, 60, 90, 180 to see what did we get wrong, what did we get right, and just keep making the sessions better. Obviously, finding a balance. Again, there's always a balance between how much knowledge, product knowledge, technical knowledge you have, but obviously making sure that you can do the true value-based selling and you don't start talking technical to a C-suite leader, for instance. So those are some of the things. Manager coaching behaviors are obviously very important, but and what we try to do is, again, have those modular onboarding certifications, and again, tailor that by role. Just keep looking at that, working with the leaders of each of the teams to make sure that they, agree that what we've got on the truck for the new hires, especially, but even for everboarding, as I call it. And then as we work with those teams, as I said before, kind of like the white blood cells, to identify areas to build courses to make sure that we're, keeping them on track and maximizing their potential. And then we do a lot of things like landing pages and dashboards and things for instance, we have a coaching page that basically gives the managers, ways to go in and up their coaching game, and just making sure, because coaching is one of those things that sometimes managers get very busy and they don't think about it as often. So we want to keep that at the forefront of their brains to make sure that they're constantly thinking about how to develop their teams. And then lastly, we do a lot of virtual training sessions where we just put them on the calendar. They're optional to attend, but we give them a lot of opportunities to come and learn things and tools and things like that, because again, a lot of our sales teams are traveling, they're flying, so we can't expect everybody to jump on every time we have a call. So we kind of offer them periodically so they can join when they can.
I'd love to talk to you about what you just mentioned, coaching. You train the managers to give feedback, but is it kind of like just that? It's up to them to then make it happen, or is it more structured than that?
Yeah, today it's more kind of up to the manager. Obviously, we give them the tools, and we have manager leadership curricula as well. So especially if we have senior leaders come into the organization, we have curricula specifically for them to kind of go through that. We also do we practice spin here, so we do spin coaching. So we have sessions for the leaders to kind of basically go in and learn how to coach. We do kind of prescriptive training as far as looking at each individual. So we work with the leadership teams. We're rolling out a program called the Impact Accelerator Program, which is basically where we work with the managers and the individual team members to, again, get more prescriptive on each of the teams to kind of assess them as individuals and where they want to go. And it doesn't mean they're not performing. They may be performing at 100%, but there's always the ability to get better. And so we just want to give them tools and especially the managers to be able to do that. The other thing is we have our manager curricula or leadership curricula. We want to obviously bring in aspiring managers. So we don't want to wait until you get the promotion, and then now we want to, while you're doing your new job, trying to take a lot of training. So we want to really get you in there early, start taking that training and develop you as a manager. So we have that full bench of potential managers who are, pretty much ready to go. And not only does it help them as a manager, but it can also help them as an individual contributor to kind of look at that information and understand, the balance of coaching and doing it on your own.
How do you identify those people?
Well, we typically we're just open to anyone, so it's not necessarily identifying specific people. We're asking really all of the teams, and so we're working right now with one of the groups to kind of pilot this. And so we're working with each of the team members, basically do a quick interview with the teams, or ask them to identify areas where they want to develop, where they think they have gaps and things like that. In the past, I've rolled out coaching programs. For instance, my last company, we haven't done it here, but the last company, we basically had a third party group come in and we did some coaching assessments with the teams. We had them rate their team members, and then we had their team members rate themselves, because oftentimes there's a delta. The manager might think they're doing a great job in this area, and the salesperson might think they're doing a bad job in this area. So sometimes there's a delta between what one manager thinks and the individual contributor thinks, but we want to make sure that we understand that they're kind of at least get on the same page about where they feel like they are and where they need to go. And then we use tools like Gong to basically understand and have them submit a couple of coaching sessions. And that's how they get their certification, basically to show that they can use the skills that we've taught them.
just to kind of close, what is the most important lesson that you've learned as a leader that you would pass on to someone earlier in their sales enablement or talent development career?
Yeah, I guess, and what I try to say to my team members, especially they haven't been in sales, is just to reinforce again how busy they are, and we have to make sure that we come to the table knowing, we can't just throw a course together, check a box, and throw it at the team. It has to really be great. We also have to make sure that it's aligned. It has to be something that the team members believe that they need, and we basically work with them to build it. But the key is really to stay close to the business. Tie that learning to the outcomes, and remember how busy they are. Because again, when I was in sales, for instance, I might have 15 opportunities. Each of them have 70 different tasks I have to do. And so when we come knocking on the door with the training course, it had better be good and it had better be valuable. Otherwise, it's really just going to become a distraction to the teams, and they certainly don't want any more distractions.
Yeah, that's true. Working with salespeople, I do know that they have a lot on their lists. So, Michael, this has been wonderful. I've really enjoyed talking with you today, and your perspectives, especially on sales enablement, have been really interesting. Thank you for being here.
Yep, thanks for having me.
And thanks to everyone for joining us for this episode. See you next time on the NovoEd Talks podcast.